Hi, everybody. I'm here to share a story of an experience with you today. I was asked a question about waking up in the middle of the night and what do you do with that? And a certain kind of waking up in the middle of the night, not just, I ate too late in the evening or I had a glass of wine and the sugars are waking my body up, kind of waking up in the middle of the night, but the kind that happens over and over again at a certain time and then leads to often just a restless, sometimes obsessive thoughts, or just an inability to really quiet down. And sometimes, possibly not every time, but sometimes this is a call for something from deep in ourselves, from spirit, from source. Not so important how you name it. It's what's important is the experience. I wanted to share with you today the experience that I had 3 years ago. And tomorrow I'm going to make another video and share my process a little bit. So today what I'm sharing happened on January 11th, 2018, and I was in Chicago staying with my daughter at their apartment, which was at the time they were living in an apartment that was way up in the air, about 21 flights up above the freeway. And not my usual environment, but I often go and help out with the kids, with the grandkids, and I was doing that. My second grandson was a newborn at the time, and I went to help out while his father was traveling. So I was having a beautiful experience caring for little grandson Jax. And at night, I would wake up in the middle of the night. It was always around 3, anywhere between 2 and 4 a.m. But it happened night after night after night. So I developed a practice of sort of an embodied meditation where I would lay in bed and just slowly relax, feeling myself inside of my body. That morning, on January 11th, I woke about 3 o'clock, and without moving much, I just started my meditation. And I can't say exactly how long I was doing that before something that has not happened since then and had never happened before in my experience. I was laying in bed, quietly embodied in this meditative practice, and I began to experience myself as an observer of myself. And in this place where I'm almost inside of me watching me, my body started to move. And what happened it began with undulating movements. So from my toes to my head, my whole body was just sort of doing this sort of caterpillar movement for a very, very, very long time. Definitely longer than I would probably have the patience to stick with in my own practice, in my own waking practice. It could have been up to an hour. I wasn't keeping track of the time, but at the end I had awareness of how much time had passed, so that all kind of comes together. The undulating movement eventually changed, and I was kind of tossing back and forth. My head did a lot of twisting and turning. It was almost like a spiraling wave that went through my body from my toes to my head, and it just kept waving through. And every time it waved through, my body would move with it, and I was just sort of going along for the ride and witnessing it all. And this went on for a very long time. So during the process of this time, my body was doing the undulating, at times just kind of like throwing off the covers. I mean, not with my hands, they just were like getting kind of worked off through these movements. And my arms were twisting around, and I even recall a couple times sitting up and doing a lot of tapping all over my body. So my hands started actually interacting with this process and like tapping the energy up and down my body. And overall, the entire experience lasted about 2.5 hours or so, 2.5, 3 hours. And I came into a state of more like conscious awareness. And when that happened, I stopped and just kind of sat up in bed a little bit. I think I would describe my state of being at that time as being like I was really calm. I felt really calm, and also had this realization like something big just happened, and realizing right away, the first thing I realized was you need to drink water. So I drank water, and it was like I was really thirsty, so I drank a lot of water. And then after that, I realized I really want to take a shower. I need water all over my body now. So I got into the shower, and while I was in the shower, that's the when I first noticed a shift in my consciousness, a shift in my awareness, and I would describe it as just sort of like delight, awe. I was feeling just this awe, delight, love, amazement, everything. The water was like miraculous. I just couldn't believe water. Like, how did I never notice this? It was like alive. And then my body and the soap, the sensations, the heat, the warmth, everything was just so um, full of, and I was in so much awe of the life and the energy around me. And then when I got out of the shower, I passed myself in the mirror, and I had an experience that I got to say I haven't fully had since then, or at least in the 3 weeks following that. I did a little bit, but in my life, in those 3 years that have passed since, and I haven't really experienced this quite to this degree. It was an incredible experience of of just delight in myself, of love, awe, of witnessing the beauty and the magnificence and the grace. And I just started cracking up. I was just, it all seemed so funny. So here I am, naked in the bathroom. At this point, it's about 6:30 in the morning, and I'm just hysterically laughing. And then the realization that I never realized this. I think this is what I am, and I never knew. I never noticed. But the powerful realization that it has always been this way. It wasn't like this just happened. It has always been this way. And I had never noticed. And then that made me cry because it seemed it was poignant. There was a little bit of tragedy in that I've gone this whole life. I'm 55 years old now, so at the time I was 52, and I had never noticed. It was just incredible. So I'm laughing and crying and laughing and crying, and then realizing I probably should, it's about time to go wake up the kids. So my daughter and the grandsons were all sleeping, and it was our ritual. Our routine was that I always go wake up and I pull the curtains up, and so I went in there and I got dressed, and then I went in their room and started pulling up the shades. And the first thing my daughter said to me, she looked at me and she just said, "What happened to you?" In a funny way that I realized that it was visible. And I just laughed and I said, oh, "It's a long story. I'll tell you." And just we started our day. And then I was there for 3 more weeks. So in the 3 weeks that followed, everything that I experienced while I was in this state, it was kind of maintained. Maybe not to the intensity of that morning, but I somehow, and probably because of the circumstances of caring for this infant, being with my daughter, being away from my own life that I had made for myself, um, it was maintained. So for 3 weeks, I lived in this state of grace. And during this time, the things that happened they just affirmed that it was real and not something that I was dreaming up or imagining. Like, people stopped in the streets just to smile and say hello. Dogs, every dog, it seemed, wanted to come up to me and greet me. So they were pulling off their leashes. And I remember one day my daughter saying something like, "Stop egging them on." I'm like, "I'm not doing anything. Like, this is how they are." And so I met a lot of dogs and a lot of people. And I also connected with a homeless couple that I think before that, even though I I think of myself as an empathetic and caring person, there's a sort of a guilt and a feeling of helplessness around the homeless that in the past always kept a distance. And I found myself just walking towards this couple and fully embraced by them. They were actually, the first thing they said to me was, "Where have you been?" And and which led me to make food and bring food to the homeless in Chicago. So when I wasn't caring for my grandson and helping out with the chores and things around the house, one of the things that I just felt compelled to do was to make sandwiches and lunches and walk around town handing them out and writing little like love notes and um, not my usual routine, not what I would normally do with a 3 week stretch in Chicago. But that's all I wanted to do was just care for the infant, just care for others, and also to witness. I took so much joy in just being around anything and witnessing its beauty and its grace, and I loved just even just like sitting in the grocery store on the stools by the door and just watching people talk to each other. And it filled me with this sense of just awe that it was so beautiful that people talk to each other. I mean, it was just like like I said, just things you would take for granted. It was all so fulfilling, so filling. Everything was filling me. Every moment of the day filled me. There was no lack. There was no need. So many of the things that I would maybe have wanted to do, like let's go to the bookstore. It didn't matter what I was doing. It the feeling was always there. When I came home, when I came back, and at 3 weeks later to my own life, there was a gradual loss of this. In the 3 years that have passed, I have done my research trying to understand and work with what happened and what I understand from other people's experience and from witnessing and now living through my own is that you go back into your life, you go back into all the constructs, the histories, the stories that you've been given or that you've given yourself, and they are dense. And that expansive energy that I was experiencing in Chicago during those 3 weeks in January of 2018 slowly began to kind of feel like they were almost being like compacted into some old way of being that I just couldn't seem to be able to stop. It was like I didn't have the ways and the means. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the understanding to stop it. So it just kept happening and it was just excruciatingly painful and there was a lot of despair. There was a lot of fear. I thought I'm never going to know this again, and I felt like I had lost something so big. But at the same time, I also I didn't deny it, and I didn't pretend it never. I didn't pretend that it never happened. So as a result, I just kept working on understanding it and working with it, and I found a practice of my own, and I found ways to at least for periods of time bring back some of the sense and feeling and experience of what I went through enough to know that it's there. And then this has become a big part of my life now is uniting what happened then and what is now and finding ways to bring them together and function in a body in this plane of reality that we all live in this time that we all live in a way that is sustainable for me that I can understand and work with. So it's a process, but I told that whole story because I wanted to just introduce the possibility that there's something calling you, something that your body, your soul, your being, who you are in this deeper way that's very unknown to you, possibly at this moment, like it was for me then, that is calling you to wake up to it, to wake up to yourself, to wake up to your true nature, your true essence. So it's most likely not going to look like what I went through, maybe some little bit, maybe here and there, but I think everyone's experience will be totally different. So the idea isn't that you're like to how to reproduce what I went through. The idea is to be open to the possibility that something is awakening in you, and that's why you're waking up in the middle of the night. And if that's the case, be present with it and be open to it and even welcome it. So, and when I do the second video, I'm going to just show you a little bit about what I did in this embodiment practice, because that might be helpful. And until then, thanks for listening, and I'll be back. Stay well.